Good morning, everyone. Running a little behind today. Had a couple of little technical issues that always seem to come up out of the blue, but we're here and we're live. So please like and subscribe, share, comment, and we'd love to answer your questions. Had a great weekend. Got to get in the car and drive. Do a little take a day to do nothing day. Actually, driving is very therapeutic for me, so it was nice to get in the car and get away for a day or so. We're going to start this off with a comment. I'll put the video in the. I was hoping to get it on the shared screen, but some of the technical issues I didn't have time to pull it up and do all that. But basically, I shared a clip from one of our podcasts. It's basically, should I fast if I'm trying to gain muscle? And the clip is basically me saying, if you're trying to gain muscle, it's probably not a great option. And if you're a stress monster, you're under a lot of stress, intermittent fasting is probably not a great option either. And the gentleman said in the comments, probably not a good option. So you don't know. That's really helpful. And this is something that people don't quite understand. There are principles that basically apply, but until we actually try something, we don't actually know. But when you've seen a large sample set, like for example, my brother is severely allergic to rubbing alcohol. Okay. So if you put rubbing alcohol on him, he will have anaphylactic shock, he'll have rashes, the whole deal. That's a very small percentage of the population. So, does that mean we should stop using rubbing alcohol because my brother has a reaction to it? Okay, and we didn't really figure that out until he actually tried it. A certain number of people die when they take aspirin. Luckily, it's such a small number that the benefits of aspirin outweigh the 0.00001% chance of you dying from taking it. There's certain people that just react that way. When you start, there's principles and things that you do with people that have a higher probability of success, but you really won't know until you actually do it. And that's why one of the big issues in the fitness industry is like this N1, this person did carnivore and fixed all their problems and they're lean and they're jacked and they're doing great. But the vast majority of the people that try that end up crashing and burning. So, uh, uh, you know, Christian Thibaudeau, I'll share the link to his video series on intermittent fasting. And he talks about how different individuals respond based on their stress, based on their cortisol, what's going on with their body. Some people develop like binge eating habits, so they develop a really bad relationship with food if they do intermittent fasting. For some people, it works great. It's a tool. And a lot of these things we really don't know really definitively what's going to happen until we actually try them. But I've worked with so many people, I can play the probability game and go, the probability of this helping you is high. That's why we have our 5 fundamentals, because the 5 fundamentals, the probability if you do all those things, the probability of you getting the goal of looking better and feeling better is going to be extremely high. Some people only need to do one or two, others don't. Other people have to do them all, and there still might be something missing. The human body is such a complex system that there's so many working parts. That's why we just basically check off as many boxes as we can and see what happens, test, retest. And Christian is a great strength coach. Known him, followed his stuff for years and years and years. A specific example of a bodybuilder that he worked with that was 250 pounds and was eating 1,700 calories a day. Now, for most bodybuilders, $1,700 calories a day would bury them. It just wouldn't be enough food. But this guy could maintain his muscle. Christian said he was so efficient, he didn't need a ton of extra calories. So does that mean that every 250-pound bodybuilder should eat 1,700 calories a day? Probably not. And we won't know until we play with it and see changing. And that's the thing too. I've done fasting and it's worked for me for certain periods of time, and then it doesn't work anymore. Just like training, you do something for 8, 10, 12 weeks, 3 months, you make progress, and all of a sudden your progress stalls out. And so then you have to either like increase recovery or maybe you need to increase volume. Specifically when it comes to training, I respond like if I want to get big and jacked, heavy weights do it for me. Okay. That's what makes me get big and jacked. I can grow muscle on sets of 5, sets of 3, Most people don't do well that way. My former roommate, Alan Kress, who trains Shaquille O'Neal now, who has an incredible coaching business online, he needed more volume. He need volume, right? And so he had to train. We had to learn. He had to learn that he needed a combination of a little bit of heavy lifting with volume. He responded really well to that. Because I can get big doing sets of fives doesn't mean everybody can get big doing sets of fives. A lot of people don't have the structure to handle. I'm built to handle lifting heavy things. A lot of people don't have that structure. So the whole point of this, and my response to him was probably not. He said not a good option. In other words, like, oh, thanks for the answer, thanks for the no answer. In a large sample size, there will be those that will still thrive, even if the method is not ideal for most people, right? So you give like 1,000 cockroaches a bug killer, and there's going to be a percentage of those cockroaches are going to live, right? And the majority of them are going to die. Um, so does that mean it's like in this sample set curve, and you'll learn this training with high level athletes. There's certain athletes that are so amazing and so adaptable. They thrive in despite of the training. And that's why I always look at the middle of the curve when I'm working with athletes. Okay, what are the guys in the middle doing? There's going to be people at the bottom of the curve that no matter what you do, it don't matter. Like you could have the best program in the world, they're just not wired right. Then there's the people in the middle that are like, they're going to be more dependent on like what you do. And then there's the outliers at the top who can do all the things, the Keith Richards, the Dennis Rodmans, the Goggins, the guys that can run with their broken feet. Like those people are up here, but that doesn't mean that everybody in the middle should be doing what the people at the top do, because it's going to break most of them. Well, some people's metabolisms, Ryan, that's a great question. Some people's metabolisms are so efficient. Like there are there's an Indian tribe, or I don't know what the proper term for them is, in Arizona, who traditionally live on less than 1,000 calories a day, and they have one of the highest, because they're eating like insects, and they're living in the middle of the desert. They don't have a lot of things to eat, so their metabolism has evolved over the years, and they get energy from the sun and the ground, um, you know, when they're in nature. There's people that have um, a super efficient system, and they don't need the extra calories. There's people that can live on low doses of calories and do really well. There's people that need higher doses of calories. Of course, your metabolism changes with the environment and with the things that you're eating. Um, the science behind able to do that is some people are just better at doing things than others. I mean, some people see people go on a carnivore diet and put on a ton of muscle mass, but the majority of the people that do carnivore diet strictly without a lot of carbohydrates, they struggle to put on muscle mass. They don't have the insulin to do it. Like insulin's the most powerful hormone in the body. So if you're trying to get bigger, secreting insulin on a regular basis is going to be beneficial to you. But there are people that always are going to do well regardless of what they do. And that doesn't mean that everyone should do that. Right? So, but some people can eat a ton of food and never gain weight, and other people can look at a donut and gain weight. I tend to be the look at a donut. Well, not really. It depends. It takes me. I have to overeat for a long time before I gain weight because I have so much muscle. My metabolism tends to speed up. But if I eat a lot of processed food, I put on a lot of weight really quickly. I tend to hold a lot of water, so that's why I don't eat a lot of processed food. But I'll put the video to Christian where he gives that example and talks about it. But there's some people that are just wired certain ways, and that's why you got to be really careful, like taking advice. Like I took this supplement and I did this, or I'm on this program and it worked for me. Well, that worked for you, great. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for everyone, right? So, that being said, now let's get into the actual title and the topic today: how to boost immunity naturally fast. And obviously, I'm not a medical doctor. This is not medical advice. This is just based on my own experience. And I have firsthand um, experience with dealing with immune system issues. It was probably I first had an autoimmune disease in like ulcerative colitis in like 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. It was a combination of too much work, not sleeping enough, having a couple car accidents, stress, the market collapsing. I ended up with colitis, and that's what really got me into the like sleep, rest. I was working way too much, not taking care of myself, and I ended up getting colitis. And I was able to get it under control through diet, lifestyle change, things like the float tank, meditation. Being introduced to Paul Check. You've got to work in so you can work out. I thought a day off from the gym was resting, but when you're working a 12-hour day and you're only getting 4 or 5, 6 hours sleep at night, that's not rest. Okay. So that is correct. We are all our own little science experiment, Ryan. And like if you have some, I've had people literally the only change they made is they drank more water. And we don't know like what was the side effect of that. Okay, they drank more water, their body had the ability to detox certain things that got certain pathways going. Or I've had people just add protein. That's the only thing they did, and they dropped sizes. So for some people, it's as simple as changing one or two things. I had another lady who had PCOS. We did all the things. She was on a computer all the time. We got her outside more. She didn't respond. Her PCOS didn't go into like remission. There's a podcast on my website, jimlaird.com. You can go read Carla's story where we talked to her. It took us a year to figure out the right amount of exercise that was right for her at that time. And we had to dial it way, way back. And finally, she was able to get results. She was trying to train really hard, and her body just didn't like that. And so we are all an N+1. We're all a science experiment. And you want to check off as much of the low-hanging fruit as possible. You want to gather data like Oura Ring. You want to do labs. And then you can see like, oh, okay, this is probably something I need to take care of. You take care of those big rocks, and as you get going, you basically fine-tune according to the results that you're getting, or the negative results, the positive, negatives, and things that are changing. So absolutely. Um, and thank you, Ryan. I appreciate the discussion and I appreciate the question. But I mean, I've seen some really weird stuff. I mean, here's an example. I had a young lady who was a soccer player who was 16, really good soccer player. She kept rolling her left ankle. And when she was standing, her left foot would basically collapse. And she couldn't like put her whole weight on her left foot for whatever reason. And I did all the things. When you have ankle issues, usually it's a hip issue, it's a pelvic, rib cage position issue. We did all the things for months and months and months, and still kept rolling the ankle. We're doing everything that we were supposed to be doing. So when I run into an issue like this, I have people that I take people to that know a lot more than I do, and one of them is a guy named Bill Hartman in Indianapolis. If you ever get a chance to go visit Bill, Bill has helped me, with back issues I've had from car accidents. He's the one that basically taught me about circumferential expansion of breathing, circumferential expansion and bracing, and about the pelvic rib cage relationship, and basically how position affects performance, and how there's trade-offs there. Bill takes a look at her, has her do a few things, scratches his head, goes into a drawer, gets a popsicle stick, puts it in her mouth on the left side, has her bite down on the popsicle stick, and her foot goes flat to the floor, and has her do the assessment. She nails it. Takes the popsicle stick out, has her do the assessment. She fails. It was her jaw that was causing the issue. Does that mean everybody's got a jaw problem? No. But if you take care of all the things and it doesn't work, it might be something like that. But you have to pick the low hanging fruit first, and then just keep investigating. For the vast majority of people I see, most of the reasons they're not feeling well and they're not in a good place is because of the chronic stress that they're under from modern life. So that's a tough topic for another day. But to get into the immunity thing, so I got my colitis under control, and then it was I can't remember, somewhere around 2014, 15, somewhere in there. We were doing, my former business partner, Molly Gralbeth, we're doing our second Train Like a Girl. Molly and I started a seminar series where we did Train Like a Girl 1 and 2. We had women. It was really the first seminar exclusively for training women. and we were having 2 Train Like a Girl 2 was basically happening when this happened. I went and got my one and only pedicure. I had a young lady, convince me that my feet were in a bad place and that she would really appreciate it if I went and got a pedicure. So I went and got a pedicure. I basically was seduced into getting a pedicure, I might say that. And, so a couple days after the pedicure, I start getting this pain in my right leg, and I'm like, I lifted heavy the other day, nothing. All of a sudden, my leg starts to swell up and turn red, and I'm like, oh, this is crazy. So I go to the walk-in clinic, and they go, well, you got cellulitis. They give me a shot of antibiotics and symptom. I'm like, okay, this is gonna get better. uh, Go back, it's not getting better. They tell me to put heat on it, which makes it worse. So then one of my clients, I always usually wear shorts, and one of my clients who's a medical doctor, who's actually the head of the cancer institute at a hospital in Lexington, and she goes, why are you wearing pants?" And one of the girls said that I needed to look at something, and something with your leg, and she's like, "You're limping a little bit." And so I basically, uh, show her my leg, and she turned white, and she runs out to the car. She gets on the phone. Uh, she calls somebody, and she's like, "You're going to the infectious disease center right now." So I head to infectious disease center. I get in there. I show them my leg. Lady turns white. Get I get rushed into the room. They bring in all the interns, and the doctor walks in and goes, "This is really severe cellulitis. If this is MRSA, he's like pretty much gone." He's very blunt, and when they're bringing all the interns in to look at you, it's not a good time. So they immediately started IV antibiotics. Luckily, it wasn't MRSA; it was staph. It was a staph infection, and they were prepping me for amputation because it was really getting out of control. And luckily, we were able to bring that down um, with antibiotics. Well, and then I got the lecture that one, you need to be on antibiotics for the rest of your life, and two, that it's going to come back. I want to be on oral antibiotics for the rest of my life. And two, it was going to come back. But this time, when it came back, it wasn't going to manifest itself in the leg. It was going to be a full body, get a fever, like you don't have any respiratory symptoms, and all of a sudden you have this massive fever. And they're like, you need to get in the hospital as soon as you can. So a couple months later, sure enough, I'm in the gym and I start feeling weird. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I got to get to the hospital. Something in my gut told me. So I start driving to the hospital. I leave the gym, leave my assistants in charge. By the time I get to the hospital, I'm like running 104, 105. I'm hallucinating, and they put me in an alcohol bath. They give me antibiotics. Well, this repeated itself for every couple months for like a year, and I was starting to run out of antibiotic options. And I ran into a guy named very controversial inflammatory figure named Dr. Jack Cruz, and I ran into him at a Paleo FX that I was speaking at. We started talking and interacting, and I told him about what I had going on. And he's like, tell me what you do for a living. I was like, well, I'm a strength coach. So I start at 5 in the morning, and I basically go till 6, 7, 8 at night. And he's like, when's the last time you seen a sunrise? I was like, probably when I was a kid, like going on fishing trips and stuff. He's like, how much sun do you get? I'm like, well, I go outside. I pretty much wear sunglasses, and most of the time spend in the gym. He's like, you do realize that the sun runs your immune system. Your immune system changes with the seasons, and you're basically, your immune system is jacked up because you spend your entire day under artificial light. So that makes sense to me. So I was like, I'm gonna try this. So I basically came back, pissed all my clients off, fired all my morning clients, didn't start till 10, spent my entire morning out in the sun. Would take sun breaks during the day, put some red lights in the gym, put some UV bulbs in the ceiling, some black bulbs, so it made it a little more like sunlight. And sure enough, I did not have another infection for until this year. For some reason, early in January, I had a little flare up. I had a fever, and for some reason, it manifested in my leg, and I got a little bit of cellulitis in the leg, but I was able to basically uh, treat it with IV vitamin C and get it under control myself without antibiotics, which is great. Um, so I went years and years and years with absolutely zero issues because I started living a more outdoor lifestyle. So I would say, based on my experience, and of course, this might not, but it's it's a fact that the sun basically runs your immune system and your hormones, and most people are zoo humans. So I literally, like, now I literally spend 97% of my day outside. The only time I'm inside is to cook food and to sleep. Um, and, I have all the lights off at night. I've got, red lights and things like that. And, yeah, Jack essentially, saved my life. So, uh, you know, always be grateful for that from him. But, he basically exposed me to that information, and then I started implementing it into my coaching. I was like, "You gotta get outside." A lot of these people are struggling with hormone issues, they're struggling with sleep, and that all of a sudden circadian rhythm became a big part of my practice, and I started talking about this stuff, way before, finally, some of the mainstream people are talking about how important circadian rhythm is, and if you get into the research, start looking at the research in cancer, there's a huge link between circadian rhythm disruption and cancer and Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all these diseases. A lot of them are basically related to circadian rhythm disruption. And that's one of the reasons why our number one habit is walk outside 3 times a day. Because you're going to get outside, you get natural light, you get sunrise, which is going to set your circadian clock. It's going to help your hormone production. It's going to give you all the things you need. And then throughout the day, in the vitamin D, people don't understand that the sun does way more than vitamin D. The different light frequencies do different things. It penetrates your blood. It does all sorts of different stuff to your blood and your system. But, you know, if you want to boost your immunity quickly, get outside. And then the other thing is, I think one of the biggest problems with modern life is we sterilize the living daylights out of everything. And so everybody's wiping everything down, and I'm clean, but I don't go obsessive over it. I'm not afraid of being exposed to other people and their germs. That is how you build an immune system, right? That's why children get sick. They go out and they play in the dirt, and you roll around, they go to school, they get exposed to other organisms, and they build immunity to it, right? And so we've created this world of, like, you're living in a bubble and you're living in a temperature controlled environment. You're not being exposed to nature. You're not being exposed to the sun. Being told the sun's bad for you. You're going to get skin cancer and die if you go out in the sun. Um, so, you know, when it comes to natural immunity, getting in line with nature, getting out, getting your feet in the dirt, eating real food, all these things, monitoring, trying to control stress. Stress, you're under chronic stress, that suppresses immune function. That's why my friend Dr. Kurt Parsley, and hopefully we'll have him on here soon. He was a SEAL, and he used to be doctor for the SEALs. And he would notice that every time these guys go on, like, we go on R&R, they go for a week's vacation, they get sick every time because they've been under so much stress that their body suppressed their immune function, and they finally get a rest, and all of a sudden they get sick. And they're like, oh my God, I don't want to take any time off because I'm going to get sick every time. So it's really interesting how all this stuff works. But that's why people are looking for, like, all these magic pills and magic formulas. But if you don't have those 5 fundamental habits, and walk outside 3 times a day to set your circadian clock, get your vitamin D, eat high quality protein, at every meal, drink high quality water, spring water, get the lights off at night, have social connection. If you don't have those 5 things, there's no need to go chasing fancy things or fancy gadgets. So you have those things in check, and if you're still having issues, that's where you can go into, like, Oura ring data. You can go into labs. You can go into all these other things to see if you can, and the Oura ring is great because it tells people that are super hard chargers that don't regulate very well exactly what's going on. Well, how are you feeling? I'm great. I don't feel stressed. And we look at their data, and their respiratory rate's 19, their HRV is 5, and their resting heart rate is 7. And it's like, okay, you don't feel like you're stressed, but your body's telling me you're stressed. That's become your normal. So we have to basically educate them on, incorporating some stress management into their life, getting them to relax, and so they can actually improve their health. And a lot of people don't have the self-awareness to realize that. So that's just a few thoughts. Dr. Stillman is doing some neurofeedback this morning, an appointment for that. Sometime in the next couple of days, we'll do how to boost your immunity naturally fast 2, which will be more of the medical detailed version instead of the caveman version. My version is very concise. And Dr. Stillman, for those of you that like to geek out, he'll be able to go into the details on that actually, if you look in my YouTube, I'll even I'll even share it in the comments or in the description. Dr. Stillman and I, when I still had my gym in Lexington and the beer bug came out, um, we did a whole thing on how to boost your immune system naturally, and he gets into a lot of details on that. So I'll post that. You can check that out. But Ryan, thanks for all the feedback. I appreciate you commenting and asking questions. And the guy that commented on my fasting video, thank you as well. Like, I love discussion. I love it when people challenge my opinion. As long as it's not personal, like you should be able to ask questions and say, hey, well, this doesn't make sense to me, and and that way we basically expand and talk about why I think this, right? But everything's an experiment. And then as you have more experience, that's why mentorship is so important for like new coaches, because mentors can say, well, this is probably what we need to do. We need to try this and then measure and test and see what happens. And because there's a lot of this, there's only trade-offs, right? That, you have to kind of try different things and see how different people, react. Because the people will say, well, this guy can do this and he did that, and everyone should do that. And it's not necessarily the case. What buries one person might make another person thrive. So you start with the low-hanging fruit, you start with the simple stuff, and then you tweak from there. And then if your goal is just to look good and feel good and be healthy, it really isn't that complicated. You really don't have to do anything extraordinary other than, do the things that definitely don't work, which is staying up really late, not getting great sleep, eating processed foods, drinking soda. These are things we know that are really not good for you. Those are the things you need to focus on getting out of your life. And then you need to get more things into your life that do have a positive result. And over time, those habits are going to accumulate and you're going to have better outcomes in the future. So for immune system boosting, don't be afraid to like go out in public and interact with people. That's what helps strengthen your immune system. Get out in nature, get more sun in the winter, get out and get more cold. It only makes sense that your immune system would change during the seasons because you're going to be fighting off something totally different in the wintertime, especially in northern latitudes, or in the tropics, like me moving to Nicaragua. There's going to be like a lot of different things that my body's never seen before in that tropical environment, and my immune system is going to have to be completely different. And I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. Being close to the equator with tons of sun is going to help. But like I remember the first time I moved to California, when I moved from Canada, it was a landlocked location, and I moved to Redding. And even though Redding is inland, it's still close to San Francisco. So I got really sick when I first got there because obviously I was being exposed to things coming over from China and then coming from being near a more dense population that I was sick for a couple months. I used to have colitis. I go on the medical route, took over. Yeah. Hmm. Yep. Very wise. My dad uh, had colitis. I had colitis. My dad went the medical route too and ended up with a colostomy bag. The big thing with autoimmune disease, colitis, that I've observed, is it usually comes after significant trauma, like car wrecks, things like that. Um, there's and then obviously you want to simplify your diet and you want to manage stress. Stress is a huge factor with colitis. That's why I started getting the float tank. But this isn't medical advice. This is just throwing this out there. If you look into the research, nicotine actually is very effective, almost like 85% effective in calming the colitis flare up. So I'm not telling you to do this. I'm just telling you how I did it. I did a combination of like float tank, acupuncture, learning how to chill, improving my sleep, simplified my diet, combined with I started using nicotine patches at first, and now I use a little bit of nicotine every day. I use one of those Zen pouches, take a couple of those, one or two a day, and I haven't had a colitis flare up since 2009, 2010. So, and that's the thing too. A lot of people won't. When I work with smokers that are quitting, I always tell them like, look, you probably need to stay on a little bit of nicotine because a lot of the people that quit smoking end up getting colitis. So the nicotine is kind of protective for that. And also most people don't realize nicotine is protective from the beer bug. So I remember telling people that in my gym, like you might want to go get a little nicotine gum and just try it and look at me like I was insane. And nicotine's protective against the. I mean, obviously, you've got to deal with the addiction issues of that. But if you actually study nicotine, as long as you don't abuse it, it actually has so many more positive attributes than negative, especially when it's not smoked. It's patch or pouch. It has a lot of really beneficial focus, all these sort of things. So nicotine's kind of been demonized. Uh, I definitely don't want you to smoke, but using nicotine patch from time to time or a little bit of gum is definitely. I like the pouches personally. Currently, I take no meds. Yeah, great, Ryan. That's awesome. And getting to the root cause of things instead of just covering up the symptoms. We actually have a lady that sent me. She's been battling high blood pressure for a long time. Mother of seven, engineer, very type A, high blood pressure for years and years and years. Finally, we were able to get her to start resting, self care. She's on blood pressure meds, and we'll actually go over this case study here on one of the lives. We got her data. She sent it to me. Her HRV 3 days after the coming off the blood pressure medication went from 10 to 70 in a couple days. Her resting heart rate came down dramatically. The blood pressure meds are affecting her nervous system that much. Dr. Stillman can get into the details on that. But, with her, it's getting her to actually slow down. She's eating a really, really high fat diet, which her body really didn't like too much. That's the thing you don't understand when you have for somebody who's under a lot of stress, you know, extreme diets like fasting or high fat, carbohydrates. I know they've been demonized in the fitness industry, but having a little bit of carbohydrates, if you're a stress monster at every meal, helps manage cortisol. And then, of course, getting out in the sun helps manage cortisol, getting outside in touch with nature, relaxing. If you have somebody who's really stressed out and you fast them or you low carb restrict them, that cortisol is going to spin out of control even more because when that blood sugar drops, it's going to have to, cortisol is going to have to try and get sugar into the system. And so getting people, Thibaudeau goes into that in his video series that I'll share. I've got a million links to share under here that he gets into the details on different personalities and the different diet styles that people need. I've seen most of the women I see over years do not do well on an ultra low carb diet, particularly if they're training hard for long periods of time. That doesn't mean you can't use low carb as a tool, but most people do not respond well to it over long periods of time. That's why I like carb cycling and things like carb backloading, carb night from Kiefer, who I used to do podcasts with. Who knows what he's doing now? I haven't talked to him in a long time. Yeah, testing is expensive. And but what I can tell you from working here in the medical side of things, when people take care of the basic fundamentals, the labs take care of themselves for the most part. There's a few times when there's exceptions to that, but it's few and far between. Most of the time, it's that's why we've really put an emphasis on the coaching side of the practice. Because even people that are coming in that are train wrecks, if they focus on the basics, it fixes most things, and they don't need to go into the labs. Some people need to see the labs to kind of give them a wake up call. And that being said, if you're interested in getting on live Q&As with us on a regular basis, we just did our fundamentals of wellness Q&A yesterday. It was fun. Had a bunch of people on. The people who couldn't make the live emailed their questions in. We got into details. Our whole fundamentals of wellness course is in there. Basically, there's also a strength training portion that I'm basically adding to every month or every couple of weeks. I'm adding new modules, basically building it out. I'm going to be doing this Saturday at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern. I'm doing a strength conditioning fitness Q&A specifically for the fundamentals of wellness. You'll be able to get on live with me. I'm going to basically, you got a program, send it in. I'll watch you do exercises. We'll modify it. I'll help you basically, tweak things and make it more efficient for you and your body type and the way you move. Yeah, I agree, Ryan. This stuff should be taught in school, but unfortunately, there's a lot of people making money off people being sick, right? And that's just kind of the reality. That's why it's so important to have freedom of speech. Look at what they tried to do during the beer bug. They're trying to shut down information that now, of course, all these people got banned for recommending certain things, and now that they're finally quietly admitting that these things that people like Dr. Stillman and other people got banned off platforms for were actually the appropriate treatment, and the actual treatment that they were recommending was actually doing more harm than good. So, that's why freedom of speech is so important. So people can share their opinions, and then people can debate, and then people can make their mind up for themselves. That's why if anytime somebody wants to censor somebody, it's probably not a good thing. That doesn't end in the long run. And honestly, free speech needs to basically apply to everything. Obviously, you can't threaten people's lives. Things like that. Free speech is even for the things you don't necessarily like to agree, because you don't want somebody being in charge that gets to decide what the narrative is, especially when there's money involved, right? So, if you're interested in joining the fundamentals of wellness, just go to stillmanwellness.com. It'll say join, and you can watch a webinar where we talk about it. We have a monthly fee that you can be a part of the course. Any of our other courses that you buy with us, the fundamentals of wellness is automatically included in that. So that is part of it. And then you can enter discount code Jim to get 10% off. So yeah, check it out. See if it helps you get on a call with us. You can spend time with us. And as more people get in the course, we're going to be adding more group coaching. But check that out. And if anyone has any other questions, happy to answer a few questions before I jump off here. It's been this 43 minute. Actually, I got in here about a couple minutes late, so it's been about a 40-minute rant. So I'm trying to slow my breathing, not over breathe too much. But after this, I'll go over there in the backyard and chill for a minute, get the breathing under control. So it's pretty hard to talk for 45 minutes straight without breathing in a weird way. So everyone, have a great day. Check out our stuff. We actually have opened our thyroid course up for purchases. We usually don't do that to the end of the month. We're actually releasing it early. There'll be a link to that, and you can use the discount code Jim for that as well. So thank you, James. I appreciate you tuning in every day. It's really nice. I appreciate the feedback. And, please, I'm in the process of basically setting up the questions and the interviews for the next month. If you have anything you want us to cover, please let us know. We can do that for you. Have yourself a great day, everyone. Get yourself outside. You deserve it. Your biology needs it.